Hello and welcome to Manga Toaru 96, and today we're going to talk about Toaru Majutsu no Indeks. This is the second part on covering the long and eventful life of Aleister Crowley. But before we start, here's the spoiler warning, as I'll be spoiling a lot of things in this video, so if you don't want to be spoiled, I would highly recommend that you go and read the light novel, as it is an enjoyable read. For everyone else, let's start with what Aleister did in 1904. In 1904, while in Egypt, Aleister made contact with the entity known as Ivasa, using his wife as a medium. Summoned into Rose's body, Ivasa conveyed secrets to Aleister through her which he would compile into the Book of the Law. The grimoire would form the foundation of the Telema, and according to Aleister, its creation marked the end of the Aeon of Orisis and the dawn of the Aeon of Horus. The exact contents of the book remain unknown to most of the world, where the theories which Aleister brought about it were essential enough to blow away not just the Golden Dawn foundational theories, but also the new theories which Matters had planned to build by hijacking them. At the time, Rose was pregnant and unknown to both parents. Ivas created an action concerning the unborn child's fate, which only became apparent later on. Not long afterwards, Aleister's and Rose's first daughter, Lilith, was born. Obsessed with his daughter, Aleister read the stars to determine the name he would give his daughter, one which carried meaning and ended up being very long. Nut, Ma, Antor, Hector, Sophor, Gelbels, Lilith Crowley. During this time, the happiest in Aleister's life, he temporarily stopped his magical research to assist with the birth and to protect his unstable wife and daughter afterwards. Having halted his research to focus on ensuring his family's safety, once their condition had stabilized, Aleister resumed his work to find a way to avert Lilith's foretold death. In order to make up for the lost time, he went on a journey to a great mountain in order to achieve a certain objective. Where, while he was there away from his family, the effects of sparks from the clashing phases resulted in Lilith's sudden death from illness, just as foretold. He only learned of his daughter's death by letter once he had finished his task at the mountain. He had wished for his daughter's happiness more than anyone, but had not been allowed to come running and be with her in her last moments. On that day, Aleister left a single tear stain in his diary. Lilith's death was the beginning of his fall, a trigger great enough for the human to hate and curse the destiny of the entire world, truly giving up on the loss which he had cursed since childhood. Aleister sought to strike back against that which had taken his daughter and torn his family apart. He continued to plot the destruction of the phases and all magic in order to free humanity from their influence, believing he would only then have truly fulfilled his duty as a father. Unknown to Aleister, however, Ivasa had intervened when he possessed Rose's body and taken steps while Lilith was in the womb to ensure that her essence would be taken to the safety of another phase until circumstances would allow her to survive when she returned. At some point after Lilith's death, Rose would break and subsequently leave Aleister. He would marry multiple times afterwards and also had mistresses. He had other children, among them his second daughter Lola, though Lilith remained his favorite and at the forefront of his mind. In 1909, Aleister had another major encounter during a trip to Africa. While looking for ways to move between spheres, he had discovered an abyss between them, one which could not be phased through even when binding tarot cards with a path. He intended to find another way to pass through this abyss in order to cross between spheres and carried out a summoning experiment in the African desert in order to do so. Having found that approach from Loch Ness experiment didn't really suit him, Aleister used a magical circuit created from the blood to free those which would have an immediate effect. He sought to become one with the abyss so as not to take spiritual damage while facing through it to accomplish his goal. The entity that appeared before him during the experiment was the demon known as Coranzon. Unknown to Aleister, this demon had been previously summoned by Matters during the downfall of the Golden Dawn and given one command, to pretend to have been summoned by Aleister Crowley and then guide him to ruin. Not content with existing clipods, Corazon broke through Aleister's attempts to bind it and temporarily hijacked his body as an avatar. Fortunately for him, he was using his apprentices Vitor Neuenbrock as a breaker in this ritual. The breaker functions perfectly and the demon was driven away. Though he likely gave up on crossing the abyss after this event, this spectacular failure apparently got him more fired up, not knowing the truth behind the encounter. After failing to hijack Aleister's body, Corazon subsequently hid within a mountain of appearance and travelled from northern Africa to England. Bound to follow the contract even after Matters was killed, Corazon would continue to plot Aleister's ruin and manipulate events under the identity of Lola Stewart and acting as the Archbishop of Necessarius. Between Lilith's death and 1947, Aleister journeyed across the world while attempting to continue his magical research towards his goal. He was deported at various points during this time and was ultimately unable to establish a permanent or long-term base for major magical research. Despite this, most modern-day Western magic is judged to have come from his work. Aside from the Book of the Law, he wrote a number of other grimoires, including Moonchild in 1917, Book 4, and Liber 777. A general unemployed, eccentric, and unrestricted magician, Aleister was a magnet for controversy, earning the ire of many, both magicians and non-magicians. At one point around the time when the Paris police were covering the crotches of naked male sculptures, he stole one of the butterfly decoration used for the task and wore it over his trousers to a party. At some point during his journeys across Asia, Aleister coincidentally visited Japan and saw a Kamakura-era Buddhist temple. The sight of the large Buddha statue there left quite an impact on him, and according to some stories, he tried to change his religion on the spot. At another point, he attempted to climb K2 with no extra oxygen supply. Aleister predicted the outbreak of World War I, but remained focused on his magical work instead of making any attempt to prevent it. Some of his symbol would end up being worked into the design of MHS Hood. Whether this was intentional or not isn't known, but the symbol enabled the Hood to be summoned as a ghost ship in an incident many years after it was sunk. There are stories that Aleister worked with the MI5, though it isn't known how true they are. From 1920 to 1923, Aleister was active on the island of Sicily in Italy. While there, he established the Temple of Telema to share his knowledge. Around this time, certain methods were used involving the use of drugs with Aleister's mind to induce paranormal phenomena, which would eventually be used in Academy City's Power Curriculum program, where the temple collapsed following an accident due to a mistake made while treating the sick. At some point during his early years, he had run into a dead end in his research and, like many European magicians, took a trip across the Mediterranean to Africa. While in Egypt, he incorporated the name of Isis, Osiris, and Horus into his concept of Ionos, eliciting a laugh from the magic god Nefertiris. During his past as the world's most powerful magician and king of men, Aleister had the potential to become a magic god and a member of the True Gremlin. However, he rejected becoming a magic god and chose to remain as a human, remaining in the same realm as his family without giving up on anything. He came to despise the magic gods due to their nature and their connection to the phenomena responsible for Lilith's death. Standing at the pinnacle of the magic world as the strongest magician on the planet, Aleister Crowley announced that he would give up the magic he developed and start over again, analyzing science and technology. That was seen as the greatest insult to the magic world, for the strongest magician in the world to give up magic and switch to science, as if to say that magic was inferior. As a result, Aleister became the enemy of all magicians in the world. Among the people trying to kill him, there were not just specialists like Necessarius, but also people that least related to magic. On December 1st, 1947, Aleister's pursuers were closing in on him in the British countryside. Having hunted down every last magician of the Golden Dawn, in accordance with the rules he had set when he had destroyed the Cabal, he turned his own blade on himself and received the curse of failure, collapsing like a burst bag. To most of the world, this was where he died. However, Aleister was actually saved by Heaven Chancellor, who sewed him back together and sheltered him from the United Kingdom. The Doctor would later provide Aleister with his life support system, guiding him towards Japan and helping create the plans for Academy City. Following his death, Aleister would secretly come to Japan in order to make his comeback. His choice was influenced by the Doctor, who supported and transported him when he was near death, as well as his memories from his previous visit and having lost interest in Paris and Sicily. It was only a few years since World War II and the country had not yet recovered, giving Aleister the opportunity to construct an institution in Western Tokyo in the name of education and technological recovery. He also considered the nature of the locals, which he had glimpsed in the temple, ideal for construction a scientific and academic city cut off from the occult. He made sure that it would have everything he needed, including room for further growth. Thus, Academy City was born. Around this time, Aleister also developed the master plan which he would follow for more than 50 years afterwards. Having experienced failure before and now being cursed to suffer it, Aleister devised his plan, modeled after his own telema, that will within his soul, so that regardlessly of success and failure at any step along the way, events would ultimately proceed in one direction towards fulfilling his own goal. One of the main elements in this plan was the Imagine Breaker, which Aleister had lost when the arrow which he held was destroyed in 1900. In order to draw it in once it resurfaced, Aleister modeled Academy City's setup after the telema of the Wilder yet to be born, such that it will become an environment in which the Imagine Breaker would thrive. Additionally, his life support system would give him an estimated 1,700 years of extended lifespan in which to carry out his plan. At some point, Aleister would have the Wind of Lost building constructed as both as a base and a ship that would allow him to reach outer space for the final stage of the plan. For the next 60 or so years, he would operate from the shadows as the ruler of Academy City, working to bring his plan to fruition. During this time, as the enemy of all magic, he created a new term, the science side, drawing a line between magic and science using the archetype controller and dividing the world between the two. With this development, modern science robbed the occult of its legitimacy and made scientific investigation and examination the symbol of correctness, winning widespread acceptance and spreading a mentality akin to science worship, in which the certificate was considered correct and scientific data absolute, though both were actually part of a world which could be explained under a single unified theory. Aleister succeeded in making it look as though they were two different worlds. At some point after he divided the world into two, he established a treaty between the magic side and science side, which prohibited either side from using the other's techniques, interfering in the other's affairs, though he secretly still made use of his magical techniques. Though most of the magic side believed Aleister Crowley was dead and buried, Necessarius maintained a Crowley-specific post to deal with the magician in Cabal, claiming to be his successor and using his magical system, and for the possibility of his rumored survival, which Lola Stewart was quite aware was the case. This post had a spiritual item which was said to search for him individually through his life support system, prevented it from detecting him. Despite still calling himself Aleister and allowing a few magicians to meet him at times, hardly anyone figured out that he was actually Aleister Crowley. This was in part due to Aleister deliberately leaving false information concerning himself. Since the original information was wrong, magical and scientific means to track him down wouldn't find connection to the real Aleister Crowley. As such, the Angelic Church was led to assume that his name was just a common name between the two, or maybe even a false name. He kept most of the truth concerning himself, his plan and his base hidden, with all that was known to most people being merely composed of information presented by him. At some point during this time, Aleister brought over 1 billion of his alternative possibilities into the world without having thought it through, and ended up having to bind all of those other selves to his body, with his life support system being used to prevent them from defusing. At another point in time he took measures so that he wouldn't end up becoming a magic god. While attempting to reach the pure world beyond that phase, Aleister would also make preparation in order to locate and eliminate the magic god themselves who were impeding to his plan. With this, I covered everything that I wanted to cover on Aleister's life. And that'll be all for this video. If you like this video, leave a like, leave your thoughts in the comments below, or subscribe to the channel for more manga reviews and One Piece content. And until next time, take care.